Within you lies something sacred, an essence, timeless and powerful. Aryaa creates a space where ancient wisdom meets modern consciousness, a journey of balance, infusion and transformation. We are Aryaa.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Karina Hans, CEO of Aryaa Organic and Seeker of Eternal Truths. It is my distinct pleasure and privilege today to welcome two amazing people. One, Karina Arya Hans, our 14-year-old host tonight, who will be interviewing the incredible teacher, friend, mentor of mine, Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. I am thrilled and privileged to host you tonight, and without taking any more time, thank you, welcome, and enjoy.
Hi everyone, I'm Karina Hans for Aryaa Organic and welcome to the podcast. This is the first episode, I guess. So, today I'm interviewing Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. Thank you so much for your time and for being here. So he's one of the world's leading experts in sound healing and neuroacoustics, and I've always been really curious about how sound affects us. I'm really passionate about music. I love listening to music. So this is really interesting for me, and we're so lucky to have you here today. So okay. So starting off, like, how are you feeling today? Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Thompson.
I'm good. My life is an exciting adventure.
I'm sure it is. Thank you so much. So let's start right away. Just could you like explain, well, what is neuroacoustic sound and what does that even mean, honestly?
Yeah, I know. I showed my business card to a bank teller, neuroacoustic research, and she said, neuroacoustic. What is that? Has that got to do with where you're pounding a drum? And when I've done research into shamanic drumming practices, the pounding of that drum is somewhere around 5 hertz. then that's a theta brainwave frequency. And theta is where you go when you're dreaming. So it means that if I pound a drum at 5 hertz and you're awake and aware in beta at about 20 hertz, your brainwaves will start slowing down from 20 hertz all the way down to 5 hertz and transform your experience of consciousness in the process and land you smack dab in the middle of where you normally go when you're dreaming, except you're not asleep. So that's a shamanic journey where you're not aware that you're here. You're not climbing in some cave, meeting a totem animal and having a conversation with some shaman who's going to give you some secret, but it's all happening in your deep unconscious mind, populated with the language of the unconscious mind, which is surreal imagery, allegorical, metaphorical story. You can orchestrate that with this brainwave entrainment pulse. You also have things like, Tibetan bowls, where you rub this metal bowl, and there's a certain beautiful sound that comes out of that bowl that kind of cuts through the chatter in your mind and centers you. But when you listen to that bowl, there's a pulsing in that bowl. And that pulsing, if you measure it, is a brainwave speed. So even those guys, 3,000 years ago, understood the principle of brainwave entrainment, building these brainwave pulses into the bowl, where the sound of the bowl cuts through the chatter, and the entrainment puts you to another state of consciousness, which is a deep meditation state. Now we're in the 21st century where we've got, high-tech recording studios and sound processing and sophisticated EEG machines that can look what's happening inside your brain. Sophisticated devices like we use called heart rate variability that looks inside your heart and can see the autonomic nervous system in the center of your brain that is the master control system that tells all the systems in your body what to do. So now we can hook you up to an EEG, and we can precisely control the sound pulses electronically and watch your brain waves change in the process. And then there's something called binaural beats, where you've got 2 tones that are slightly out of tune. And that out of tuneness creates a beat. And that beat is sort of a phantom pulse. So if I've got 2 speakers, and this speaker's got 100 hertz tone, and this one has 105, the difference is 5. And you'll hear that as a wah-wah of air molecules modulating between the speakers. And that 5 cycle a second wah-wah, your brain waves will entrain to it just like the drum beat. The reason that's significant is because if you take the 2 speakers and you put it in headphones instead, so now you've got 100 and 105, and you hear this 5 cycle a second pulse. The question now is, where is that pulse coming from? There's not air molecules colliding anymore. It's a true quirk of brain processing, where the 2 hemispheres synchronize themselves together to compare notes, because this is a mystery. The brain is going, I'm hearing something that this one's not hearing, and I'm hearing something that this one's not hearing. We have to check this out to see if it's a threat. So it compares notes, synchronizes the hemispheres, manufactures the pulse that I'm hearing out of nowhere, and then entrains my consciousness to a pulse that doesn't exist except me manufacturing it, which is pretty cool. That's a very much more powerful way of doing things, because it's an active brain process where my brain is actively creating a state of consciousness and going there. And this is good for all kinds of things: meditation, certain types of healing. There are certain conditions, neurological conditions, that have a problem with the hemispheres being able to talk to each other. ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, autism, epilepsy. A lot of these different conditions have that as a problem. So now all of a sudden, if you use these binaural beats through headphones in a clinical way, you can force the neural pathways to light themselves up, and those conditions start to go away.
One of the things you were talking about was about how just with a lot of different like cultures and religions that they have this like that they have sounds that have been with like those cultures for like since the beginning. So could you talk more about like an example of that, I guess? I was just really curious about what you were saying there.
Yeah, well, shamanic drumming is one, Tibetan bowls is another, Chinese meditation gongs,
Mhm.
similar thing. Indian music is probably one of the biggest examples where the principle is worked into the musical culture itself.
Mhm.
And how that works is, for instance, you've got the tambura, which is a big gourd with a neck and 4 strings,
Yeah.
and the sitar, which looks similar, but it has 13 strings, 7 on the top and 13 underneath. But the tambura, the drone instrument, it's got 4 strings, and those 4 strings are tuned to the lowest note is the tonic frequency. Now, I don't know what it's going to be, but let's just say it's A440.
Yeah.
The next 2 strings are also A, except they're at 220, 1 octave lower.
Mhm.
And then the 4th string is a harmonic 5th. And the harmonic 5th is a mathematical sacred geometry thing.
Mhm.
Harmonic 5th is the golden sectional ratio, which is proportions of the universe and proportions of your body. That's what Leonardo da Vinci was doing with the drawing of the Vitruvian man, the man with his arms and legs in a circle. He was
Yeah.
exploring the proportions of the human body. The golden section ratio proportions of the human body is what that drawing is all about, to draw the perfectly proportioned body.
Yeah. I
And
know what you mean.
Michelangelo did the same thing with his 20-foot tall statue of David.
Mhm.
It was a treatise on, let's do that in 3D. Let's make a 3D statue of the perfectly proportioned male body. But this exploration is the same exploration that's going on in the drone and Indian music. You've got bom, 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 bom,
Mhm.
bom, 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 bom. And that's reiterating the tonic with its octaves and a harmonic 5th, which is deeply recognizable to some place in the unconscious mind. Because if you go deep enough, is the big mind who designed the whole universe based on the rules and laws that we are able to decipher, like the golden section ratio.
Yeah.
So it's a way of waking something up deep inside as recognition. And then the sitar and whatever else is going to play some melody around this drone.
Mhm.
But the drone stays the same. Very powerful, very powerful
Mhm. So
method for centering and meditating and
yeah.
waking something up.
So then just in general, I mean, would you like to share some just more specifically some of your research and I mean just more about your job in general as a whole?
Yeah, my
Mhm.
my job. People ask me, what do you do? And I decided to answer by saying I'm a expert in otherology.
Mm.
So, well, let's just take that apart. There's I had a clinical practice for 41 years where I saw all kinds of patients that flew in from different parts of the world with all kinds of very heavy duty medical conditions.
Yeah.
I was a holistic doctor, and in the context of that, I developed this sound technology.
Mhm.
It evolved over the years. Um, I eventually sold my original practice and opened up a new center in California for pursuing the sound work full time. In its present form, it has evolved to the use of something called real-time heart rate variability.
Yeah.
So this is heart rate variability is a monitoring device in the medical world it's a gold standard in modern medicine because of its ability to view the autonomic nervous system, which is in the center of your brain, which is the master control system that tells all systems what to do. So if that system has a problem, you could potentially have any kind of disease you can imagine. As a matter of fact, in modern medicine, it is currently understood that stress is the cause of disease.
Wow.
It's not stress. It's the stress handling center in your brain that needs to be able to handle the stress. And if it loses that ability, that is when disease starts.
That's really, wow, that's
So
really
we can see it on a computer screen. We can hook you up to some wrist sensors, and it takes a few minutes of measurements, and then these graphs pop up on the screen, and you can see the sympathetic and the parasympathetic live on the screen. And then you can do some simple tests to see if it's functioning normally. And if it's not, generally what it will look like is the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight part, is stuck in an on position. And the two of them can't reach the zero balance point anymore. Zero stress in the system. A prerequisite for the internal physician program to come online and manage all my body systems so I can be healthy. So if that is disengaged, I can't be healthy. And all my systems start to drift in their function. Alarms go off. That's symptoms. I'm running this fight or flight response is burning up all my resources. Our innovation is that we've created a real-time heart rate variability system that's watching this like a movie, where all the previous ones were snapshots. We've got a real-time system. We can look at this. Now we can explore different sound frequencies that are very precise until we can find a sound frequency that pushes the clutch, pushes the reset button, and makes this go back, breaks that vicious cycle, returns the system to normal. And we can use sound as a sort of a gym. You listen to this sound every day, and it brings it back. And the more times it comes back, the stronger it gets to be there.
That really, I think I'll touch on it more later, but that really resonated with me, what you're saying about stress, because of the fact that, I mean, in my life, I've dealt with a lot of stress and I've had a lot of just, unhealthy ways of dealing with it. I actually think one of the best ways I've learned to deal with it is just a lot of the time listening to music has really helped me. I think it's helped me more in the sense of the lyrics, because I really enjoy writing and reading, and so I also read a lot and write a lot when I'm stressed. So that was really just nice to hear. But and I'll talk more about that, but as a freshman in high school with, so much going on and not knowing if I want to do something with writing or do something, and there seems to be a world of possibilities out there. I mean, how did you decide that you wanted to do this? I mean, was there a moment when you thought like, okay, I'm going to spend my life working with sound? Like, how did you come up with that, I guess?
This is sort of a loaded question because I grew up in the 60s. And when I was in high school, that was the a crazy period. It was the Vietnam War and Richard Nixon and a lot of protests, particularly on college campuses. People were in the streets. There were the civil rights movement and all kinds of ugly things happening with that. Women's rights movements were going on. It was the awakening of consciousness. It was the time of Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, who became Baba Ram Dass. These were psychiatrists using psychedelics for therapy.
Yeah.
That was that whole explosion of consciousness and save the planet and make love, not war, and whole foods and organic and all the stuff that we see today began there. And in the midst of all that, when I'm a senior in high school and know that I'm coming close to the point where I'm going to graduate from high school and have to figure out what to do, and realizing how absurd it is that somebody who's 18 years old is supposed to make some kind of big decision about what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life, and I'm supposed to know that somehow. You know, and so you've got a lot of pressure to choose which college and what your major is going to be. You know, I suspect that many kids really don't know, so they choose something that off the top of the head seems to be okay. For me, it was more important than that because I had to go to college right after school, or I would be 3 months later in the rice paddies of Vietnam shooting and killing people.
Yeah.
So I really had to make a choice. And what I came to was what my dad said to me. He said, if you're going to have to work the rest of your life doing something to make a living, there's two things you need to do. Number one, make sure you choose something that's going to make you a comfortable living. So you're not poor and worried all the time about money. And number two, the path to that is to choose something that you really love doing. Whatever grabs you by the heart and you get excited about, that's what you should be doing. And it doesn't matter whether you look out on the landscape of possibilities of making a living at whatever you want to do. And this may not have an easy answer of how am I going to make a living if I do that. That's unimportant because if you choose what you really want to do, the universe is going to open it up for you.
Yeah.
For me, it was art.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a perfect example because, and it's a credit to my father and my parents, my mother and father, that they did raise hell about the fact that I was going to go to art school. Because how are you going to make a living as an artist? You're going to be a poor, starving artist. That's what you're choosing. You know, why don't you become a dentist? Not that I've got anything about dentists, but you know, what I'm talking about is they allowed me to make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a good artist. I was drawing all the time, making paintings all the time.
Yeah.
I was a musician, making music all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was a filmmaker, making films all the time. So I took the 3-day grueling art aptitude test at the biggest art school in Boston, where I was living. And I passed and started going to art school. And here I am, this famous doctor who has developed all this stuff with sound. I've got 90 soundtrack music albums sold all over the world. And at that time, the question is, how are you ever going to make it as an artist?
Mm-hmm.
That is the wrong question. How am I going to make it is a good question. And the answer is, do what your passion is. And when you do that, the universe will open doors for you and you'll walk through those doors and it may not look anything like where it all started out. I'm not making a living as an artist. Although I was able to contribute to what I'm doing by designing my own album covers at one point. It was cool, you know. It all somehow weaves itself together, and what spits out the other end is the uniqueness of you.
Yeah.
With your multifaceted talents that is a fingerprint of you. And the more perfectly you can fit yourself into that mold, the more perks you get from the universe. The more the universe opens the doors and turns the lights green and introduces you to just the right person at the right time, it becomes inexplicable. It becomes this series of synchronicities that's way bigger than you.
When you first began your work with your research and with your neuroacoustic research and all of that, I mean, what did you think this work would actually do? I mean, now that you've been doing it for such a long time, has it surprised you? Have you been led on a different listen, for example, I listen to a lot of like Kendrick Lamar and I listen to Taylor Swift. And
Mhm.
what is the impact that that kind of music has on people, I guess?
Taylor Swift has my special attention, partially because uh, she's so phenomenally successful, and her lyrics and what she writes her songs about is about what she's currently experiencing in her life. So it's like a diary that is
Yeah.
exposed to all of her fans. They're getting a peek into who she is and what's happening to her and how she responds to that. And because she's the person that she is, how she responds to those things is how all of us feel that we respond to the same things. So
Yeah.
that's why the fan base explodes, because
Yeah.
she's speaking for people who are the fans. She's speaking to you. And then as she goes through the evolution of herself growing up, those stories begin to change. The songs begin to change. The content that you're listening to, what that story is she's telling you in that song is changing. But you happen to be changing at the same rate.
Yeah.
You're getting old at the same time she is. So she becomes the Pied Piper that is leading everybody
That's
with shared experiences that forms a huge loving bond. And that's why it's so big. But the story behind that is also my story, the story of musicians in the 20th and 21st century. So I told you I've got 90 albums, and at one point I was in business with a company in New York who was that we had a contract where they would manufacture the CDs and design the insert cards and print everything up and stick them in a package and market them to mainstream stores. So I was in mainstream stores. I was in Borders and Barnes and Noble and Tower Records and all the rest of those when they existed, when CDs were for sale. I had my own bin card with Dr. Jeff Thompson, um, and I was making a pretty decent living from just 15%, right? And then all of a sudden, CD sales went bye-bye. There weren't CDs anymore. When I first started, it was cassette tapes. Then CDs were invented. Now CDs went bye-bye, and it was all downloads.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the whole reason I had a contract with these guys was to manufacture the physical thing that my music was going to be on. But now there's no physical thing anymore. So what is this contract all about? Somehow it bled over into them believing that they owned my music.
Oh.
And I'm going, excuse me, that was never the deal. I own my music, and there's no place for you guys in this contract anymore. And that ended up in a 10-year battle, legal battle that took about every penny I had to fight. So they didn't steal my life's work and say they owned it. And when push came to shove, and I'm talking to lawyers and stuff, they're going, you know, the easiest way out of this is to recompose it and make another, just play the song again and record it again. That new recording doesn't belong to them. The new recording is a new recording. They only have rights to the previous recording, even if it's the same song.
Taylor Swift also.
That's what Taylor did.
Yeah.
She re-recorded every single one of her albums and told all of her fans what was up and why she was doing it, and they all supported her. And now she's making,
and she made even more money from it than like he ever.
Yeah, it's like it became this thing. She shared her life experience with people and said, here's who I am. Here's what's happening to me. Here's what I feel about that. And people responded.
Yeah.
And there's a principle there about when you look at some of the more famous people who have gone rags to riches, there's a common theme that they're more successful the more truthful they are about themselves.
Mm.
When I speak up, when I become me and speak my truth to the world, no holds barred. If you don't like it, too bad. This is who I am. This is my music. This is my art. This is whatever it is. And this is what I feel about things. For all of you people who are like me, then join the band. Otherwise, I don't have time for you, and I don't have time for my life either. I mean,
I think one thing that one of my teachers once told me, she said that with writing, the best writers, because I was saying that if we were reading a book of poetry right now, and I said a lot of it is just kind of sometimes hard to understand because it's so much about himself and it's so much about the author. And then, but what she was saying is she's like the best writers dive into the deepest parts of themselves and that's into the most personal parts of themselves and then that's where they find the most universal experiences because
yeah, I
the
agree.
darkest
That's a Taylor Swift story.
yeah and I think that's so incredible and I think that's so true with Taylor Swift especially. I mean, listening to that music, it's so personal and so raw, and it's also a universal experience, but she's writing from her heart, and I think that's so beautiful. And it really helps, like on the emotional sense, listening to that because I feel like I was just talking to someone about this that there is music for every single mood you were feeling, every single emotion you could feel. There's something, someone will connect with you out.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm wondering is with the Taylor Swift I'm listening to, whether it's one of her like pop songs or it's one of her breakup songs, is there like something there with the music itself on a deeper level that is like there, or is it with like their or is it just with the lyrics, I guess?
Well, music is a special animal.
Mhm.
Without the music, you're a poet.
Yeah.
As a musician, your poetry is now aligned with chords and chord progressions, and music is the language of emotions.
Hmm.
So, by choosing which chords you choose, you can mold the emotions that go along with the lyrics. And if you're really smart at it, you're doing it on purpose. That whatever the lyrics are talking about, you're molding the music to accentuate the emotion associated with what that's trying to communicate. The There's no question that Taylor Swift is a master of that art. Her music is good music,
Hmm.
but she's different than most because lyrics are front and center and an important part of her music.
Yeah.
The music is there to surround the lyrics, and that's not always the case with rock and roll. Uh, the music is dominant, and you can't even understand what the heck they're saying unless you buy the lyrics and read it, right? The previous to that was, there is the soundtrack of your youth that stays with you the rest of your life. The music that you're listening to now, uh, and you have listened to up to this point, but now it's going to get really intense. Um, High school, the soundtracks you listen to in high school will be with you the rest of your life, and through your 20s. For me, that was the 60s. So for me, it was the Beatles and
Oh,
people like that. And Bob Dylan sort of broke the mold with the fact that he brought the lyrics front and center again, and the music was in the background. And his lyrics were about um, the state of affairs of where the world was at that time. He became a spokesperson for a whole generation. That's the reason why, and he's a prolific, incredible sort of poet. what he's writing there that is fleshed with the music is so profound that he won a Nobel Prize in literature as a musician, the first in history. Right.
Yeah, I
That's
find
pretty
that.
mind blowing. I mean, so yeah, that spawned a generation of great musicians who had great lyrics. And
I
the
think
lyrics
that,
were up in front, you could hear them.
yeah.
So it became this new poet musician mix that's important, pulling on your heartstrings specifically, right?
I mean, yeah, for me, I think that's with the like the political movements that I think are a part of music. I think that's so beautiful. I think that's something I've really connected to, like just with what I was saying before, like with I've had so many issues with anxiety, and that has caused me and that has actually caused me issues with insomnia at times. It's caused me back pain, it's caused me headaches, and it's
Yeah.
caused me eating problems. And so I guess how does sound help with that? I mean, obviously I'd want to know.
Well, this technology that we developed with the heart rate variability. So here's the idea: that we hook you up to some wrist sensors, collect a few minutes of information, screens pop up. I can see the sympathetic, parasympathetic. If I lay you back horizontally, then sympathetic and parasympathetic should go into this balanced state. And it should do so in 3 minutes. If it doesn't, we got a problem. Sympathetic is stuck on. And if the sympathetic is stuck on, I'm running a fight or flight response all the time. That means I'm running a vigilance program. My body thinks I'm under threat. It thinks that there's something sniffing around looking for me for breakfast, right? And so under that situation, when it comes time to go to bed, my brain won't let me get to the deep stage of sleep, which is where I'm most difficult to wake up and most vulnerable. That's where physical healing takes place, deep delta brain activity. And so we end up with a epidemic of chronic insomnia in the Western industrialized world. 170 million people can't sleep in the United States alone.
That's
And
crazy.
it's all
That's
because of stress. It's all because of stress. I can't sleep because of stress. And if I'm running a fight or flight response all the time, here's what happens. Well, you know very well what happens with a fight or flight response. I'm at zero stress. Internal position is in place, using the energy in my reservoir to work on the list of me being healthy, directing my system what to do. I feel threatened. Sympathetic turns on. Every drop is drained out into my muscle to fight for my life. Energy is pulled from my gut, elimination system, immune systems, higher brain centers, into my muscle to fight for my life. It's supposed to be temporary. But what if it's not? What if it's stuck? What if it's chronic? What if it's like year after year? It means I can't digest my food properly. I'm essentially quasi-starving. The food that goes in doesn't all go into my body. It sits there undigested, and the stuff that's undigested ferments and creates toxins. But my toxic elimination system is also disengaged. So I don't know what to do with it. So my body stores it in my fat tissues, where it's not supposed to be. And my immune system is compromised, so I catch stuff that comes along. My brain power has been pulled into my muscles, so I've a little brain foggy. Concentration memory is impaired. Besides that, running a fight or flight response, I'm burning up all my resources. Internal position program is not in place directing everybody what to do. No signals are going out to rebuild tissues, so they're starting to break down. I'm starting to develop weird conditions. Inflammation in my joints, they call it arthritis. Inflammation in my muscles, they call it fibromyalgia. My adrenals are rolling all the time. My blood pressure is high. My blood sugar is high as part of that response. Two biggest prescriptions in Western medicine: blood pressure medication and pre-diabetes pills. All from stress. Not all, but most from stress. And all of those conditions come just from that. And then pretty soon I might start to get allergies because my immune system is weakened all the time. I've got gut issues. I can't digest my food. I've got gas and bloating issues. Maybe I start to get irritable bowel syndrome. All of that stuff stems from that. It's devastating. And the most tragic part of it all is that the fix for it is to get the system back to zero again, so the internal position program can come back online and start working on the list to untangle all this stuff. Because nobody's smart enough out here playing doctor with a white lab coat. Nobody's smart enough to untangle how the body has become disassembled.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm talking about? This is the big holistic idea I'm saying, is that there's only one place where healing comes from. That's inside you.
that makes, honestly, I was able to realize like where all of my issues were coming from because of just it's like it's weird if this is coming from a certain when I'm going through a certain experience in my life. I've only had this type of insomnia like twice in my life currently right now and one other time in my life. And it's really like it makes a lot of sense. I just never knew the reason for it. And so I think that work is so powerful. So I guess, what I would ask is, well, what are you proudest of with your work so far? And I mean, well, what is like if you had to say what is your true purpose with this work, what drives you and gives you the passion to do this?
That has also been evolving.
Hmm.
In the beginning, my passion was to help people. As a clinician, my job is to get you better. You come in with all kinds of problems. I've got a bunch of tools I've collected over time and gotten trained in and bought and maybe developed myself to help you out of the mess that you're in so you can have a life again. A spin from that was the science of meditating, the science of expanding consciousness and self-awareness. Yeah. And there's a whole thing with brain entrainment for that. And you can look at major studies with EEG of high-level meditators. What's going on in their brain? Listen, train your brain waves to the same pattern. Put you there. Meditation, high-tech meditation training wheels using sound. Number two, in that healing work, I started to realize that there are three major systems that work together for me to be healthy: brain, heart, gut. Now, the autonomic nervous system is at the center of this web, synchronizing and coordinating everything. The autonomic nervous system has three branches, by the way. It's not just sympathetic, parasympathetic. The third branch is the enteric branch that goes to your gut. So any place that you can enter into that system, you can influence the other parts of the system. So my approach is the neurology report, the neurology approach. Sound waves affecting the brain and the autonomic nervous system, those are neurological systems that affect the gut and how it functions, affects the heart and how it functions. I could do the same thing by knowing what I'm doing and going into the gut and tweaking it there, and that would travel up the vagus nerve and affect the autonomic function that way. There's all kinds of different ways of doing it. The best way, of course, is to do them all simultaneously. Adjust your nutrition, adjust what you're eating, adjust your stress levels in your brain, adjust your emotional states.
I think that connects perfectly to, well, Arya, and I guess
that's why we're together, because it's a natural fit.
What I was actually about to transition into that Arya's mission is also just to benefit and help people. We want to spiritually heal people as well, but we're using food. And then I guess what I was gonna ask is, how do you think the two connect? I mean, personally, I think the two connect through what you were saying. I think both of them are healing people using this, and they're like, it's that idea and that concept of what you were talking about, how people can heal within themselves. And so I mean, how do you think they connect that?
Well, one of the things that I learned in being in clinical practice was I can return the internal physician program back in place. And as soon as it's back in place, this list pops up. And the list is populated with the most important things to my survival right now at the top and down. And only the internal physician inside can know how to untangle this string puppet. You know, and it's going to go down this list in a certain order. One of those things on that list is going to be the gut, the biome. and the biochemistry. And the biochemistry is formed from what I eat
Mm-hmm.
and how effectively I can
Yeah.
digest what I eat and eliminate the toxins of that process. So when that is all smooth and tuned up and I'm eating properly, nature provides. People aren't eating food anymore. They're eating chemical concoctions with
Yeah.
flavor enhancers. So the issue becomes to return to as natural a state as possible that our ancestors used to have. They would grow their own food. There was no pesticides. It was all organic. There was companion planting. There was all kinds of secrets that we're losing in order to have real food that is from the universe into a body that is also from the universe, and they meld together properly. So the concept of how you police where the food is grown, what kind of soil it comes from, what kind of food it is, what kind of seed integrity, how you grow it, what do you know about what you're doing, how you harvest it. And there's a hidden ingredient there that is from the East that even substandard food that is prepared lovingly is better than good food prepared.
So I guess how I know there's this concept of like certain frequencies, like if it's positive or negative, like it changes the food or something. How does that play a role into food, I guess, with sound in that way specifically?
Um, There's, well, I mean, there was experiments done with with plants. You grow plants next to each other in two separate environments, and this environment has Mozart music, and this one has heavy metal rock music. And this one grows 3 times bigger and faster, and this one gets sickly and droopy. And there was the experiments done by, what's his name? He did experiments with water and
Yeah,
Emoto.
that's the one I was thinking about.
Emoto. So, you've got water that crystallizes, and you've got you're praying over that water with positive, negative emotions, and it crystallizes in chaos or in a beautiful pattern. He even got to the point where he could write down an emotion on a piece of paper and tape it onto the jar, and that would have an effect. But that's a quantum effect that is another discussion, because as soon as you have a thought and you write that thought down with a pencil and paper on a piece of paper, you're infusing a quantum energy field connection there. You're entangled with the graphite of the pencil. That your emotion that you charge that sentence with is now physically in that paper with the ink.
Yeah.
You're connected no matter where you are in the world to that. And
I
that's
think it shows you how important like that love we were talking about and that positivity is.
well, if it does it with crystallizing water in a jar, what does it do with water in your body?
That's
What about the negative self-talk? So there's this thing that's it's sort of the biblical thing where Jesus is in the desert for 40 days and he's being tested by the devil. The devil's on his shoulder whispering in his ear going, why all this suffering? All you got to do is bow down to me and you'll have riches and clothing and the best food, and all you have to do is bow down to me. And all he's going is, get thee behind me, Satan. Well, so that's the negative self-talk speaking too. It's on your shoulders, whispering in your ear, and loading images in your mind of the worst possible scenario or whatever. And you know what I mean? All the fear-based stuff that you're afraid of. For me, I've eventually invented my own sort of get thee behind me, Satan idea. That I conceptualize that little voice as a negative little creature. It's a little creature with wiry fur, and it's got little claws, and it's got these little big teeth, and it's whispering in my ear, and I'm going, and I'll grab him and I'll pull him off my shoulder and I'll throw him on the ground and I'll stomp him and laser beam from my eyes and vaporize that thought, and that thought's gone. I do something positively to eliminate that thought. Something physical, something with my imagination, I do it. That thought's gone.
How does your obviously we have the same ideas about healing and love. How do you think that your work connects with Arya and the people who buy Arya organic products, I guess more specifically?
Anybody who would buy those food products is in the same state of mind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
They're already most likely interested in investigating and researching sound therapy, yoga, meditation, retreats to find yourself, shamanic practices, who knows? It's that group of people that would be interested in that kind of thing. It's broadening out its scope now because more and more people are realizing that the food you eat is killing you. It's not food. So there's a search afoot by people looking for the right kind of doctor to go to, the right kind of holistic approach that might work for me, the right kind of food, the right kind of biome, the right kind of this, the right kind of that. It's that same crowd that's it's not just the food that they're
And
interested
it's
in.
getting bigger every
It's,
day, that crowd
it's
of
getting
people.
bigger every day. There's a movement afoot. There's an
Yeah.
arising that this is all part of. So the more that you can pull elements of that together that belong together and package them together in the right way, then you've answered a lot of the search that people are searching for in the first place. They say, oh, these people have already done that.
Yeah.
They've already pulled this piece and that piece and this piece that I was researching independently. They've already done that work and aligned it together.
Mm. I guess specifically with Arya, well, have you tried any of Arya's products?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so what do you think?
I love it. I mean, there's a
Can you tell it's made with love?
what?
Can you tell it's made with love?
Well, that's what I was trying to pull out of my brain here is that there's an attention to detail that is obvious right in the packaging.
Mm.
That the packaging speaks of what's behind it. And then when you start to read anything that is being put out to explain what the company stands for and where the food comes from and the attention of detail to the food, then you know that there's right-mindedness behind that.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that speaks in your heart that is beyond me investigating it up here. That beyond a certain point, something opens and you get it. You understand that this is the real thing.
Yeah. What limitations do you think that Western medicine has that the spiritual work is able to help with instead?
That's another part of this same movement that there's a big, giant shift in a global understanding of the nature of reality.
Mm.
It's a backlash to the Industrial Revolution in a time of the period of time when spirit was being pushed to the side and materialism was becoming the big deal, where the brain, where consciousness has been looked upon as a byproduct of electrical discharges from neurons firing in your brain, and not the other way around, where consciousness exists as a universal field and brains grow out of an idea from this conscious field. That's a whole different way of looking at reality. And in quantum physics, we see something similar. The discoveries in quantum physics about the nature of reality appear more and more to be like pages from the sutras of Patanjali 4,000 years ago in Sanskrit from India, or the Vedas. Talk about very similar descriptions of the nature of reality. And one of the big things about quantum physics about the nature of reality is that all of us share a deeper level of a collective unconscious mind, that we are networked into this universal mind field. And that mind field is what's creating the next moment from now. And we are all participating in that by our expectation of what the next moment is going to be. So if I start to modify my idea about what kind of world I would like to live in, instead of the old idea that whatever it is, I'm stuck with it because I have no control. That's the difference. That's where an arising of an interest in self-awareness and self-perfection, which involves how I care for myself, what I put in my body, how I meditate, how I do my job, what kind of job I have. All of those things is what's arising. And what arises out of that is a group field of an idea that is changing and saying, how come we've got this world? Why is this what we all created? Could we have something different than this? Answer is yes. Just straight from quantum physics, the answer is yes. The next question is, how do you do that? And that is also a question that's been dwelled on for thousands of years. And that's the concept behind the group mind link idea that I'm involved with, which is how my work has evolved from individually helping people to training practitioners to go out and help more and more people, and then aligning people's brainwaves together through brain entrainment in large groups to shift the quantum field and create a new idea of what reality could be.
What do you think, like, with all of this spiritual work, what do you think the biggest challenge it faces today is, and how can we work to overcome this?
The big challenge of the world today, as far as I can see, is a return of a cyclic nature where you have the age of the Renaissance and the Great Awakening. And then that coalesces into the Industrial Revolution, where we believe that consciousness just straight discharges from the brain, that spirituality has been removed, and then you end up with a return of what we've seen in the past with fascism and authoritarianism, and then that cycle will pass because there's always a counter current, and the current is always the eternal battle between the dark forces and the light forces, and that happens under the hood. It exhibits itself, projects itself out in the world of experiences that we see in the news, but under the hood within all of us is this collective unconscious battle of the light forces and the dark forces. And the dark forces have always relied on large numbers of asleep people, so to speak, low-level consciousness, self-awareness people. It requires a lot of those people to gather enough energy from that low level of consciousness to tip the scales against light workers on this side with high levels of self-awareness and consciousness that's heavy, and they balance themselves out. So in times when the struggle is going like we see now, we see a movement of the light workers arising and coming together and being introduced to each other to come together to do something bigger. When you start aligning these high-level consciousnesses together, the weight gets bigger, and you can tip the scale. But it's all under the hood. It's an inner battle in the world.
How do you think we can make sure to stay rooted in our, like, with your work and also with Arya, how do you think we can make sure to stay rooted in our purpose and work with other spiritual research in order to achieve this for the benefit of, others' quality of life?
Well, once you awaken to this kind of principle, and you awaken to it to a point where you actually start physically doing something to incorporate it into your life. You start meditating every day. You start buying some of my soundtracks and using those to maximize that. You start to police what kind of food you eat and don't eat. You start nosing around and looking, and all of a sudden you find Arya, and here's this whole thing, and say yes to that, and you start doing that, and you start throwing away the other junk in your cabinets. You do the same thing with certain people in your life.
That's true.
At a certain point, you have to realize you've got to start firing people out of your space and populating your space with people that feed
People
you,
to make you better.
and that give you and that are, support you. It's a 4.5 billion years ago, when the Earth was still a molten thing with some oceans forming. There was the original primordial soup, of little single-celled creatures duking it out for the food morsel. Something happened at some point there. Some immense thing took place where the battle of competition for the morsel of food shifted to symbiotic relationships where they started cooperating together in larger bundles because it gave them a survival advantage. From the standpoint of evolution, cooperation is superior to competition for long-term survival. And right now, I mean, all those single cells conglomerated, and that became multicellular organism that crawled out of the ocean and became you and me. Yeah, so here we are as these multicellular organisms, but we're duking it out again. And what needs to happen is another shift where the planet wakes up and realizes that cooperation is superior to competition, that we're all in this together, that the concept of nationalism and country and all the rest needs to be replaced with Earth citizen.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, that's obviously a huge journey and a huge thing to take place. And I think it starts with like this kind of work with Arya, with the sound, with the music. And so if someone wanted to start listening to this, like to try sound healing for the first time, well, where should they start? And I mean, what's one simple thing that, they can do that even I can do every day to use sound to help my body, to help my mind?
Oh, that was one of the originals, meditating and chanting.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Chant. In order to activate your vocal cords, you have to use the vagus nerve. You have to use the autonomic nervous system. And then when you activate your vocal cords and they start vibrating, you're resonating the vagus nerve and turning on a parasympathetic relaxation response, which helps you meditate. Right? So if you want to go high tech, then you get one of my soundtracks. You go to scientificsounds.com, and there's a store there with all these meditation or creativity or relaxation or healing. Those soundtracks are there and available. It's a boost. It helps. It's pretty hard to meditate in the 21st century. Too many distractions, too much weird stuff happening, too much energy input swirling around. What used to work 1,000 years ago in a different environment is hard now.
Yeah.
The pace is different. It's
Actually,
too noisy. It's too many electromagnetic fields. It's different. You put a high-tech soundtrack on with headphones, and in a few seconds flat, wham, you're out of this, and you're someplace else in a transformed state. No more sitting for 20 years on your butt trying to figure that out. We've got tech that can do that. That's the promise, the beauty of the 21st century.
For me, I meditate every night before I go to bed. I mean, I also listen to it to fall asleep. I think I don't know. I mean, I still have issues, but I think at least I go to bed feeling very like happy and at peace. I think it helps me a lot. I think there's so many there's so many amazing ways people can transform their lives. I think definitely just trying it out, trying something out is always easy because it's worth it. And definitely with Arya, trying out the products and just making a commitment to yourself. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, the 1,000-mile journey begins with the first step. So until you take the first step, nothing's happening. It's just an idea. As soon as you actually do something, search, buy, incorporate, use it, you already started on that path. It's already happening.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been amazing. I've learned so much, and thank you so much for being here today and for blowing my mind completely. And to everyone who's been listening, paying attention to the sounds and learning so much. This has been incredible. So, thank you so much. Yeah, this is amazing.
Thank you, so. It was great.
The journey continues. We offer energetically enhanced food on our website and more wisdom, insights and ritual on our socials. Thank you for watching.